Welcome to the second part of my videos on Australian volutes, and we'll start with Ericusa, which are most of the large shells in this particular tray. So we'll start with Papillosa. There's some specimens there. There's a lovely albicine form there. And there's a lovely small one there, which I'm calling Nanomora. Leonia is also another name for smaller specimens, but I think that's been given a distinct name of Nanomora. All right, then we have Sowerby, which the larger specimens there are 24 centimeters, which is about maximum, although I have seen slightly larger. And then we also get a dwarf form. That particular one there is fully adult and less than 12 centimeters from off the south coast of New South Wales. Then we've also got Forgetrum, and there's lots of different forms of Forgetrum. I thought I was doing well with the half dozen or so different forms, but I've seen displays at shell shows where there's been absolutely an amazing number of different forms and very beautiful shells, but you can get an idea of the variety there. That's a particular nice one, those very dark markings right through to the albinistic form with no markings at all. And then we also have Sericata down here, which was named after Gertie Thornley, who I have very fond memories of as a teenager. I remember going along to shell meetings, and Gertie would always have lots of wonderful stories to tell about her shell collecting adventures. So she certainly loved her shells and she loved collecting them, and was very keen to share her knowledge with people like myself. All right, the next group I wanted to look at here were the Lirias. So that's probably the most common Liria mitriformis. That slightly bulbous one there is a form Grangeri. And then we've got the Delicosa and Hali form with those there. And then we've got this wonderful shell, Lazaroni, never been collected live to my knowledge, and has quite a small range of less than 200 kilometers along the New South Wales coast. I've also found a broken specimen of that shell, but I gave that to another collector who was very keen to have it despite it being broken. And there is another couple of Lirias, such as Nucleus from, I think it's a Norfolk Island, which I don't have a specimen of. And I also believe there's a deep water Liria being found off Rottnest Island, which is also not here. All right, let's move on to Notovoluta. So here, that small one, I'll just have a look at that, scan down some of those shells. So in the Notovolutas, we have Vericonis, the small ones there, and an albino form. We have Crucillae, excuse my pronunciation there, there's a couple there. Also, it comes in albino form, which I don't have. Gardneri, once a very rare shell. I remember in the late 70s at a shell meeting, late 70s, early 80s, a couple of collectors really buzzing from the fact that they had acquired one of these very rare Gardneri for a couple of $100. Nowadays, you can easily pick them up for $10 to $20. There's one nice one there that hasn't got the banding. And then we've also got Grandiosi. That one there, not a good specimen. I've got the details here. It was actually named after a local Darwin collector, Michael Sophrakis, named after his son. And Michael gave me that specimen when there were only, at the time, only about 4 or 5 known specimens. So I was very fortunate to have that, thanks to Michael's generosity. Also, with onto the Notovolutas, no, that's it. That's the Notovolutas that I'm aware of. That group there. The next section I want to look at is the Nanomorias, which we have down here. So we've got Gothi, we've got Parabola, we've got Guntheri, we've got John Clarkii, Inopinata. So that's all I've got of that group. I know there's a few others, very rare shells in that group. And one that I wanted to also mention was Notovoluta Cosignani. Excuse my pronunciations. When I acquired that, the live specimens were unheard of, but nowadays live specimens do come up occasionally. But a beautiful shell. All right, we'll now move on to the Teramachis. And primarily there are 2 main species and some subspecies. I'll just scan down. So that little group down there, those 3, they're there for reference. They're from the Philippines. So you've got one there of Dali, and then the 3 next to it are Johnsoni. Now in Australia, you can see our Johnsoni, all the ones I'm putting into focus now, and also given the subspecies for some of those of Duprei. So a bit of a variety there. You've got those beautiful white ones, you've got the ones there as well. And then the other one is Dali, which is also given the subspecies of Claydani. They're all from Australian waters or Northern Australia. The largest one there is 20 centimetres. And the largest Johnsoni I have is 22 centimetres. That's about the largest for Johnsoni. Dali, I think that's a particularly large one. Typically they're somewhat smaller, as the other specimens show. All right, so some very interesting Teramachia shells there. And the last last large group, I should say, in reference to size, are the Livonias. So there's Rhodniti, which when I first started collecting, a rare shell, and you were lucky to get a dead specimen, but nowadays you get live specimens quite readily and not very expensive. So my first couple were down here. Very excited when I got them, all dead collected. And then nowadays you can get live collected ones for not that much money, up to 50 perhaps more around the $20-$30 mark. Another well-known one is Mamilla. There's a couple of varieties. There's my 3 specimens. Then the largest one we have is Notovoluta. The largest one there is just on 40 centimeters. It's about, well, in terms of fairly readily available shells, that's about the largest we have. I have seen larger than that. Dare I say they possibly grow up to almost 50 centimeters. And here's an interesting one, Limpisi. And I've been told a number of things about these specimens. The fact that the protoconch is so large on some of them, it's been suggested there may be 2 different species amongst that group. But I'm not entirely convinced about that, so I'm labelling them all Limpisi. And I also thought I would just throw in, although not Livonia, just some of my larger Magnifica shells, that nice albino one. And then some particularly large shells there. All right, I hope you enjoyed that installment. And part 3 is going to be the balers. Thank you.